What does it mean to be a king? Can a common man become royalty, or must he descend from a long lineage of other monarchs? A&E wanted to answer this question in their own special way. This is the Recap Episode, a podcast where I use social science to research, review, and recap reality TV shows and take them a little too seriously by critically analyzing them. I cover all-time favorites to uncover new angles on those shows and expose shows that you've likely never heard of to show the world more of what this weirdly diverse genre has to offer. I'm Walker, and this week I watched A&E's King of Cars, a 2006 and 2007 series focusing on a Dodge dealership in Las Vegas and its owner-manager Josh Towbin, aka Chop, aka Chopper, aka the King of Cars. And while this show really wanted to be a documentary-style look at the goings-on and the behind-the-scenes of a car dealership, looking at, again, its owner and head manager, but as well as the salesmen and what they do in their daily activity, the show ended up making a stronger message about Josh, aka Chop himself, and how he truly is this kind of like revered king-like figure in the car sales world. And I find that both extremely interesting and an extremely funny bit that I just love. So where does a show like this even come from? Well, to really uncover that, first we have to talk about Chop. Chop started working in the car sales world at 14. He initially started as a car washer and then eventually slowly moved his way up to a salesman. The dealership he was working at would do a local infomercial in the evenings in which they would show off the cars they have for sale, often used cars, and during this infomercial they would make a big show of chopping the price in half as an enticement to try to get customers to come in and purchase the car right then. And from what I can see and like things mentioned on the show that I'll get into in like the recap, is that this is actually really effective, and the infomercial drove a good amount of sales. When Chop was working at the dealership, at one point the higher-ups were noticing his talent for doing car sales, and they wanted him to do the infomercial. Except he initially kind of pushed back, because he was like, listen, if I do this show, it's going to make me look like a nerd. So he talked to them and he said, listen, I'll do the infomercial, but only if I can do it my way and with my personality. And Chop, he's a real big self-promoter. He has a specific curated image and a reputation, and he wants to uphold that and maintain that and really only get involved with things that are going to keep building that image. So he began hosting the infomercial or the show in 1996, and then by February of 98, he had moved over up to be the used car salesman at Towbin Dodge, a new dealership that was struggling with sales. He took over the used car sales department and really transformed it, but new car sales remained low, and then eventually he was promoted to general sales manager, which allowed him to oversee the entire sales department. And he worked his magic, he took what he learned, and he put his own flair on it, and a few months later, Towbin Dodge became the #1 Dodge dealership in the state of Nevada. A year and a half later, he made it to general manager. Now, at the same time, word of his unorthodox but successful approach to car sales had made its way around the industry. And at this point, A&E comes in. They were scoping out possible subjects for their new series called It's a Living, which I honestly cannot find any information about. From what I can kind of scrummage together, it's a show about salespeople of different kinds, or people with at least different jobs. The premiere episode, which Chop was part of, focused on him and the dealership he was working at the time as general manager, as well as a Mary Kay saleswoman. And just sort of exposing, like, here's what it's like to work in sales. An interesting concept, from A&E for a reality show. And the episode of this show, It's a Living, this first episode with Chop, went so well and was so well received, especially at the network, that they said, hey, what if we just keep making a new show? And so eventually, King of Cars was created. Now, like I said before, this is a documentary-style show. It's a little fly on the wall, but it's a lot of the focus, the subjects of the show, following them, and then them also talking to us and providing some explanation alongside it. So it's a bit of show and tell. The show basically takes place mostly entirely at the Towbin Dodge Dealership in Las Vegas. I will point out that the Towbin family actually owns 5 dealerships in the area. The main one is the Dodge, but they also have a Bentley, Infiniti, Hummer, and some 5th dealership. But we get to spend time mostly with Chop, and he tells us about how things are going down, how he's running things, his perspective, and his insights on the current day or the industry or his sales team. And then we also, of course, get to spend time with the floor managers and the salespeople themselves. The episodes fit into a 30-minute TV time slot, so they're about 22 minutes total in length once you've taken out the commercials, which means you can't really include a ton of material in a single episode. Usually we're following one single plot. Maybe there's like an A plot, B plot kind of thing going on, but if there is, it's not super in-depth. Also, it's a show about a car dealership from 2006. Nothing is going to be super in-depth here anyway. Now, it's been a couple of episodes of this podcast since I've done this, but it's simply too good to not share. Please take a listen to the next 30 seconds of this show's intro theme, because it's been stuck in my head, and honestly, I just think it's really good. If you are into hip-hop, and I mean like the early 2000s hip-hop, again, 2006, but also, or if you like Krayshawn is the most immediate thing that like feels similar to this for me, then you'll like this.
Large, baby, first in the nation, and it's not no mirage, baby. I got the blue genie, need a deal, come see me. Chopper edition, low pros in the Santeezies. We got them dope whips, you need to come and cop them. We got them low prices, cause I chop them.
Your favorite SoundCloud rapper could never. One more thing I want to quickly explain about the infomercial, the Chopper Show, before we get into recapping and covering the actual King of Cars show, is that in that opening sequence song, you probably heard him say something about a blue genie. A huge piece of what made the infomercial, once Chop took it over, so locally viral and popular, and what put it on A&E's radar and the car sales industry's radar, was that Chop, he already has like a very engaging and entertaining personality, and he makes you want to watch him. And he makes the infomercial like interesting and exciting for people. But he also, all the rest of his sales team and his managers are involved as well. But they're involved as like characters. They're all dressed up in like different costumes, like a gorilla, a construction guy, some type of Asian, like a nondescript emperor. Someone is like a banana, maybe. And the most popular character, by far, is the Blue Genie, who is played by a salesman named Prem, who we'll get to learn a lot about in the show. But this is the most popular character. Everyone loves the Blue Genie. He just acts kind of wild, and they don't know what to expect of him. And his face is like on all the billboards. If they did any other commercials, I'm sure he was in there with Chop or the rest of the dealership. His face is on like the side of vans and trucks that advertise the dealership and the cars. He is their like main focus of the commercial. The Blue Genie and then Chop himself, because Chop is, much like a real king, a bit of a local legend and celebrity fantasy figure. So episode 1, or at least what Wikipedia wants to call episode 1, who are the only people really talking about the show anymore, so we'll go with that, is technically the episode that aired on It's a Living. They considered that to be the pilot. That's lost media, as far as I'm aware. Don't know how to find or watch that show, which gives King of Cars something in common with this podcast, because the original version of this podcast episode got lost. It is also lost media. This is version 2 of this podcast episode. But that's alright. Season 1 has 13 total episodes. You know, as long as I can watch a majority of them, I'll still get a good sense of what the show is about, what the show is like, and give me something to analyze, something to chew on. Episode 2 I also was not able to watch. It is listed as the first episode on Amazon Prime, where you can watch most of Season 1, and it's listed there, but it's just unavailable for some reason. So, didn't get to watch it. It was called We Do's at Large. Probably was very much kind of like an introductory episode. So the first episode I actually got to watch, which was episode 3 in the 13, but is episode 2 on Amazon Prime. It's called Showgirl Showdown. The main plot that we follow here is that Chop says 2 of his floor managers, Dieter and Tino, are getting a little complacent, and that's a danger for business. So Chop wants to find a way to, light a fire under their asses and get them going a bit more. So he proposes a little friendly competition. They have the one work day that this episode is contained within to try and get a higher percentage of sales based on the size of their sales team. So Tino has 10 members on his team. Mark has 9, or Dieter, Mark, has 9. So whoever, number of sales for that day, match that to the number of salespeople, and the higher percentage match is the winner. It all works out. Don't worry about the math. We're not doing the math here today. And the loser of this competition, the floor manager themselves, Dieter or Tino, has to wear a showgirl costume for the Chopper Show infomercial that night. Now, Dieter is pretty secure, pretty self-confident. It's not really impacting him that much. They call Dieter a fruitcake a lot in this episode, which is really funny to me. But Tino, he's got a little bit more of a reputation, and he's got more of a tough guy thing going on. So he really does not want to have to wear this costume on the show. The rest of this episode is following Dieter, following Tino around as they manage their sales teams, try to get various sales. A little bit of tension is built, and it's kind of like, are they going to succeed? Who's in who's in first currently? And oh no, they're being overtaken by the other one. When it comes down to the wire, there's some backhanded tactics here. Tino tries to get his dad to come in and buy a new truck to help him with this. Which is funny because Dad's like, yeah, I'm not buying a new truck just so you don't have to wear pantyhose on TV. Sorry. The whole time Chop is also giving his insight and commentary on what's going down, because we do of course got to come back to the king every now and then and see his perspective. By the end of the episode, Tino ends up winning the little competition, and so Dieter has to wear the showgirl outfit on the show that night. Normally his character is Bob the Builder. He wears a hard hat and has some shears or something, but that night he was Betty the Builder. And the show, remembering that it is technically about a car dealership and the daily work life of the car salespeople at the dealership, did remind us at the end of the day that the dealership sold 25 cars that day. The next episode in the sequence, which would be episode 4 overall, not available on Prime. Just not even there at all. 13 episodes, I was only able to watch 9 total. The missing pilot from It's a Living, and then there were 3 episodes that were just either not available or the one that was there but I couldn't watch it. The next one I could watch, episode 5 overall, or episode 3 on Prime, called Fresh Meat. This episode focuses on Chop's kind of second in command. His name is Will, or Willie, or Chitty Willie. He's a general sales manager. We learned that Chop hired him on a while ago when he came in for a fix-up for his car, and then Chop trained him up, and now he's a top sales guy and a manager. And he oversees all of the sales teams and the floor managers, 2 of whom we met in the previous episode. We meet the others this episode. And we start with 6, but one of the big things of this episode is Chop is deciding that it's time to get rid of the weakest sales team. They need to be dissolved and redistributed among the other 5, and that lead needs to be kind of reintegrated into a different role. Willie is the one tasked to do that, because for most of this episode, Chop is just in his car, and we're with him every now and then we cut to him, but it's unclear where he's coming from and why it's taking him so long to get to the dealership that day. And there's a lot of cell phone calls between Willie and Chop. They're just checking in on each other. A little strange structure, but it's fun. So the shakeup begins with floor manager Alan, who is a great salesman but not great at managing. And he's the newest manager at this moment in time, and Chop thinks that giving him that role was a little hasty. So Alan is moved to be an independent salesman, where he can make more money, but he doesn't have to manage people, which sounds great, but technically on paper it's a demotion. And the rest of his sales team is then redistributed among the others. We also get to meet a salesman named Serge, who's from Yugoslavia, apparently. And he has not been doing a great job at all. He is put on, like, a 2-day suspension, and you're like, okay, well, I guess he'll take 2 days off and then come back to work. This is on a Monday, so I guess on, Thursday? We never see Serge for the rest of the show. I don't even recall if I saw him in the background. The final salesman from Alan's team that we focus on is one of a duo of cousins who both work at the dealership and were both in Alan's team. Willie separates them, hopefully for the better, and to, like, kind of get them to stop relying on each other. He puts one of them on Tino's team, who we're familiar with from the previous episode that we actually got to watch. And Tino works with him to try to work through this first new sale he already has as part of this new team, with a dealer who's come in from Alaska that is very interested in doing a trade-in and getting a new truck, but he doesn't want to pay the Nevada taxes. And they go back and forth over and over again. I know this was kind of an odd thing. Like, you know, some of the customers, I'm sure, really did not want to be on the show, because we don't actually get to watch a ton of negotiations and sales going down. Every now and then an episode will focus on, like, one big one, or maybe a series of little ones. But I'm sure the customers got to say, and, you know, had to fill out, like, the appropriate consent and release forms to be on the show. And I'm sure some were, like, jazzed about the opportunity to have, you know, 15 minutes of fame on this reality TV show while they're visiting a dealership with a local celebrity, essentially. But these guys were all cool with it. We got, like, their names, what they're looking for. The show, again, tried to lean into this, like, oh yeah, don't forget, we are a show about a car dealership and selling cars. Here's what these guys are looking for, and here's all the details. And it's not going for a great negotiation, because they are really stonewalling Tino and this guy, whose name I just didn't write down. But Chop comes in. He's made it to the dealership at this point. Chop comes in, and you know what? He finds a way to help close the deal on this trade-in and brand new truck sale. Which I just want to take a moment as kind of our, like, analysis of what's going on here. It is a show about a dealership, but more on another layer, it's also a show, again, about displaying how Chop is the king of cars, and the ruler of his kingdom and his domain here. What this really shows us, because these guys are from Alaska, keep in mind, but they, like, know Chop. They know that he does the, like, chopping of the prices, cutting them in half, especially for, like, the used cars and whatnot, and they want him to come in and work the magic, chop the deal, get him a good deal on this car. But they're not even from here, you know. So clearly the legend and the fame of Chop, you know, he has a lot of influence even into places far beyond what I would call his kingdom that he rules over. Oh, and to cap that episode off, they sold 22 cars that day, which was a 15% increase in sales. Oh, wow. Next episode 6 overall, episode 4 on Prime, is called King for a Day. This is another episode that focuses on Willie as our primary person here, but it does have more Chop in it. So the main plot here, or the at least setup, is Chop is going to Cabo for a vacation, little weekend thing, and he is leaving Willie in charge, essentially. Willie gets to be the proverbial king for a day. And there's a big show made, and they even explicitly tell us, like, the king rarely ever leaves the castle. Like, they're calling the dealership his castle, and his office is, like, where his throne is. And Willie makes a really big deal about being like, oh, can I sit in the chair? Can I, you know, take advantage of all these luxuries that you have in your office? So, you know, not only is the show, I think, making a statement here and trying to portray Chop as a kingly figure, but it's also just, like, true. The show doesn't really have to work that hard. The people at the dealership already do that. They already kind of, like, venerate him and treat him as such, to go with the name that he gives himself as the king of cars. So we do get to learn a little bit about Willie here, which is, you know, fun and interesting. I did kind of think the show would just be all about Chop, but it does give us an insight into some of the other people working at the dealership. Willie likes to build Harleys in his free time, and in particular, he's been working on one to give to Chop for a while that has like a custom aesthetic to match the kind of cars he likes, all black and silver and chrome. And Chop also really likes lowriders and hydraulics, and so Willie's been trying to figure out how to customize this bike to give it the effect of like hydraulics on a car, which is very admirable, I will say, of Willie. Really likes his boss so much that he's building a custom bike for him. I'm sure Chop is like paying for it, but I'm sure it's not just like a gift. But it's kind of interesting to see the kind of like commitment that Willie has here. But I bring this up because Chop kind of gives Willie a little bit of a challenge while he is gone. And he says that if he can get the closing ratio on Saturday, while Chop is in Cabo, to 30%, that he will go riding on the bikes with Willie when he returns. This is a huge challenge, and it's made up to be a big monumental ask because the average sales closing ratio for weekends dealerships across the country is 15%. So they need to double the national average. Conveniently, weekends are the busiest and the most opportunistic days for dealerships. Because when are you going to go buy a car? Probably on the weekend, when you have time to spend hours at a dealership, test riding, looking at cars, negotiating, figuring out paperwork, all that stuff. So the show, while it is following Willie at the dealership and his trials and tribulations that he has to deal with throughout the day, the show actually sent a camera crew with Chop to Cabo. I think in part just because it was kind of like a weekend trip, like a Friday to Sunday kind of thing. So it wouldn't be too expensive to send a crew with him, or at least like 2 people and a camera. And so we get to see Chop, he's trying to relax, he's enjoying time. He brought like one of the top salesmen and the used cars manager with him on the trip. So you can imagine how that's impacting the effectiveness and the experience of trying to double the closing ratio back at the dealership. But Chop, even when he's on vacation, his mind is on the deal. His mind is on the dealership, and he's wondering how it's going. So what does he do? He pops onto a computer to check in on all the various cameras that he has all around the dealership. Because Chop is the king. And like most kings from history, there's a belief in their divine right to rule. And that in many systems who had a king in many cultures, there was a kind of thing where they believed that, a king was a version of a particular deity or god. And what do many of these deities and gods have? Omniscience and omnipotence. They see all, they know all, they are always there, even when they're not there. And Chop, with his cameras, has the same omniscience. And the people at the dealership know this and understand this and respect it and treat it as part of the way of things. So Chop gets on his cameras. He notices there's like a board in the sales tower where each day they document. I say board, it's a window. They write on the window like how many people hasn't up, how many people have actually closed out a deal that day, to kind of keep track and let everyone see like the leaderboard, to try to like friendly sales competition kind of thing, right? He can see that from one of the camera views, and he does not like what he's seeing. So he has one of the guys with him actually call up Willie, and he's like, "Hey, you got to kick it into gear. What's going on?" And so he has Willie go out and change out the lineup of cars that's at like the front of the dealership, that like what you would see when you drive by it on the road, in an attempt to hopefully get this going. Chop also calls Willie out, or not like directly, but he kind of tells Willie, he's like, "Hey, some of your salesmen are like goofing off and not doing what they're supposed to be doing. In particular, our blue genie, Prem, keeps trying to just like hang out inside," and Chop calls him out and calls Willie out for not being able to like control his employee here. I will say, and that's really like all that's happened in this episode. That's all we got to like focus on. There was another little mini thing with a salesman named Barry who attempts to make a sale with a guy who's like, "Hey, I'm not here to buy today. I'm just here to look around, shopping around." Will tries to like salvage this sale, but it doesn't go anywhere. But they actually do succeed. By the end of the day, they reached a 36% closing ratio. So Chop, when he gets back, gets to go riding bikes with Will. And Chop also ends off this episode with sharing with us, the audience, about how someday, Willie's going to have his own store. He'll be the head, the big honcho, the head manager, and have to do this kind of work where he's in charge of everything every single day. And he's trying to teach Will and everyone else everything they need to know for their future in this world, in this industry. The king is looking out for his vassals and his knights. Episode 7 overall, or episode 5 on Prime, is called Leader of the Pack. The main focus of this episode, one of our floor managers, Luis, is out for the day, and initially Dieter kind of absorbs Luis's team for the day in terms of like management, but Chop comes in, he's like, that's not a great way to do things. Normally the different sales teams are competing with each other for sales. Why would you have people you're normally competing with working with you for one day? It's going to make things kind of like weird. So instead, he picks one of the higher performing salesmen that was on Luis's team and has him, for the day, be the leader of that team. So Ali gets a chance to be a floor manager. Most of this episode, we just get to see Dieter kind of like flailing and failing, and his salesmen not really securing deals, closing them out, or just dealing with kind of unfortunate customers that come in. If you've ever been car shopping or shopping around for something like furniture even, right? You kind of do that thing where you like, let me check out multiple stores, and the salesmen at each store are going to be like really, really pushy. But you kind of have to like come up with excuses to be like, oh yeah, I have to go handle this thing, but I'll come back later. I'll call you. I'll come back tomorrow, when you're just trying to like leave, right? Because you figured out the deal they're trying to push on you is not a good deal, or a scam, or just not what you're looking for. And sometimes they have customers come in who just like don't have the right financial situation to get a car right now, especially if they need to like finance it or get a loan. And that's what Dieter runs into over and over again in this episode, is just bad customer setups. But very fortunately, almost like coincidentally, to the point where you're like, was this set up this way? I don't think so. I think Dieter just got unlucky. But Ali got really, really lucky. He's sealing and closing with the rest of his team that he is now supervising, deal after deal, which is, great to see. Chop put his faith in the right person at the dealership, and it worked out. The episode closes out with kind of like a hazing initiation prank on Ali. The other floor managers and Will like dump a big bucket of water on him or something while they sent him out to look at something on one of the cars. But we are also told at the end of the episode that the next day at the dealership, Dieter's team got back into action and sold the most cars. Episode 8 overall was one of the ones that was unavailable on Prime. It's called Talkin' Turkey, so I can only assume it had something to do with Thanksgiving. And another thing that kind of gives me that is some of the episodes at the end of the season get closer to Christmas, and we eventually see a dealerships-wide Christmas party. So it would make sense kind of like chronologically. Moving on then to episode 9 overall, or episode 6 on Prime, called Low Rider. We get to start at Chop's house again, kind of like we did when he was going on vacation and like packing and getting ready to leave. But this time, we get to meet Chop's sons. He has 2 sons, one's 12 and the other, I believe, is 4. Chop also is telling us some of his backstory. He was running the dealership when he was 22, like I mentioned in the little historical timeline bit earlier. While he's driving to the dealership, he tells us a little bit about, how he sees everything, and he's kind of, he's always got a mind for the business and how things are going. So even though he's talking about himself, he quickly transitions to being like, look, you see this, the lineup of the cars at the front of the dealership. He's like, listen, I was doing the same thing when I was a kid, playing with my Matchbox cars. I'd line them up, just like that. This episode is called Low Rider because Chop, for his kind of personal plot for the episode, is getting his personal lowrider kind of pulled up to the dealership. Because at the end of the episode, there is a lowrider parade where he's bringing in other people who have their own custom cars with the tricked out hydraulics and whatnot coming through, displaying their cars. And that's kind of like the focus for the very end of the episode. The other plot in this episode actually focuses on our blue genie, Prem. We learn he's been slacking. He's only had 1 sale up this month so far. And so Prem really needs to, make it happen. The rest of most of the episode for Prem is watching him work with a father-daughter duo who are both at the dealership looking for a car each. The dad is definitely putting on the, experienced negotiator car buyer hat here. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. He knows when a deal is not a good deal. The daughter, she, I guess owns some businesses and had just opened up a new location. So she just wants a new BMW to celebrate. She just really wants to get a car. Don't blame her. Treat yourself, right? And so for the most of the episode with Prem, we see him struggling to try to get both of them to close the deal, particularly the dad. Wendell, Prem's floor manager, does come in and work some tactics to eventually close the deal. Wendell and Prem working together on that, and Chop, of course, is giving us his commentary the whole time. There's technically another little minor, very quick little plot in here that I do want to point out because it's very important to establishing Chop's character and his reputation around the area. A group of students from one of the local middle or high schools who are in a technology class come by to shoot a commercial with Chop at the dealership in vain to the Chop Show infomercials, and I'm sure other commercials that air with the characters like the Blue Genie and Chop himself. During this kind of thing, we learn that this is a class that Chop himself kind of sponsors and has funded, and that he has a bit of activity in the local community, a bit of philanthropy and support, which makes him a role model, a good figure in his community to look up to. Not only is he known celebrity-wise for the entertaining and engaging show that he puts on, but he actually is giving back to his community and wanting to use his wealth and his standing and what I would call his social capital to give back and help out his subjects in his domain. He's a good king. Also sprinkled throughout the episode is Chop's kids coming by the dealership, his sons, and while they're there, you get to see Chop, being a dad, but also showing off that his kids know about cars too. This, to me, is another sign towards Chop's, kingly character. He is concerned about his legacy. He has these children. He wants them to probably carry on in the same business and carry on the family business in particular. And so he's making sure that from a young age they are prepared to do so. They know about the world in which they live, and they know about, in particular, the industry and the business, which grants them the familial power that they have, especially since they are related directly to the king himself and would be his successors. This episode closes out finally with the lowrider parade itself, all the other people coming by to show off their custom cars. Chop, of course, has his there as well. And while the parade is happening, Chop is, I guess to us, but to anyone else who's around, kind of going through and explaining, this is that car, this is what was made, changes made to it, this is how it's been customized, this is that car, make, model, year, and going through and really displaying, his knowledge and, dare I say, the reason why he gets to be called the King of Cars. Episode 10 overall, or episode 7 on Prime, is called Dunkarini. It's another little competition. This time we get with all of the floor managers, because Chop really wants them to be better. He brings in a dunk tank, and if a sales team doesn't do 100% match of sales to their number of team members today, that floor manager gets dunked at the end of the day. And keep in mind a note here about the chronological timeline. I'm seeing more coats at this part in the show, so I think it is rapidly approaching winter in Vegas at this point. It's at least getting colder. I wouldn't want to be dunked in winter, and none of them do either, especially since they're all in suits and ties and nice shirts and stuff to have that good salesman look. So we focus on Alberto, who's one of the the floor managers, Tino again, and Luis. Dieter is also here, Wendell is also here, but they're not really focused on that much. We kind of just see them at the end. We spend more time with those other three. So Alberto actually has like the smallest team of them all, I think. He only has 7 people. So he does have like the highest probability of not having to get dunked at all, which is a good setup here. It's like, oh, well, will he make it out? This episode is a lot of back and forth between everyone, a lot of Chop describing what's going down himself. Tino, the ever-smart manager he is, at 24, mind you, uses the dunk tank to his advantage. He starts offering to customers that, you know, if they decide to make a sale today and they buy a car, they also get 2 shots to throw the ball and see if they can dunk the salesman that helped them that day. And this ends up with one of Tino's salesmen actually getting dunked. They close a deal, the guy got dunked, which is cool. Unfortunate for the salesman, because who brings an extra change of clothes to work, especially a full like suit and whatnot. So he gets to be a gorilla for the rest of the day. When it comes time for the competition to come to a close, no one has actually reached their 100% match to the size of their team, so it looks like all the floor managers are getting dunked. But wait, Alberto might have a 7th sale. It just needs to be wrapped up and verified and have all the boxes checked to approve, and he might just narrowly escape getting dunked. So he runs off to try to finalize that, and actually he just like leaves. He just doesn't want to be dunked so bad that he just tried to like leave. And it's also like never really established if this 7th sale was even real at all. There's a lot of like playing up that we don't think it actually happened. So everyone gets dunked. Dieter actually finally shows up. He's the first in the tank, but no one actually hits the target, so he actually doesn't get dunked. Same with Luis, and then same for Tino. I think Wendell does get dunked, if I remember correctly. They kind of move past him pretty quickly. But they're all like, okay, well, where's Alberto? He was supposed to finalize this last, like, sale so we could do it. And they're like, we think he just left to go home. Alberto calls up Chop. He says, hey, I'm coming back. So he does come back, takes the one for the team, and he's the one who finally actually gets dunked. And then, of course, just to remember that this is a show about selling cars. As the episode closes out, we are informed that the whole team sold 44 cars today, because of the motivation from the competition. Episode 11 overall, which is episode 8 on Prime, is called Closing the Deal. This is another Prem-centric episode. And while we will watch him try to sell some cars, this is actually mostly about him trying to close with women. Chop tells us that he's been noticing some odd and erratic behavior from our favorite Blue Genie during the infomercials, and he's like, listen, Prem needs to get a lady. So that's what this episode is focusing on, is Prem trying to secure a date, talk to the women at the Dodge dealership that work there, which is very interesting because up until this point, there hadn't really been any focus on a lot of the women that work at this dealership, to the point where I legitimately, in my notes, was like, are there any women that work here? I'm like, would women want to work at such a place? There's like a lot of dudes. The vibes might be weird, but there are. It just turns out a lot of them work in like customer service roles and whatnot. Chop gives Prem some advice, on how to work with the ladies, how to communicate with them. But then at the same time, he also gets on to him. He's like, hey, you're working the ladies, but why aren't you working any sales? Chop, this is a thing I've noticed, and I've really wondered while watching this show. I'm sure Chop was like super into the idea of having a TV show, especially at his dealership. He's very much a self-promoter, so it would be great exposure not only for himself, but for the dealership. It'll get more people coming in, buying cars, making sales, elevating the business, and shooting him even further skyward in the world of car sales. But at the same time, it seems like he runs a pretty efficient ship here, a pretty good operation. And so I'm sure Chop definitely was weighing, the pros of exposure with the cons of, would a camera crew being around all the time make things more difficult? Would it put off customers? Maybe. Would it distract the salespeople? A bigger maybe. And so, it's funny to see him kind of like, as much as he is like talking to the camera, we also get a lot of him being like, hey, that's great, that's cool, why aren't you working? to the salesmen or his floor managers and whatnot. We watch Prem try to work on a sale. Chop says, maybe if he can close this deal and get this car sold, maybe he'll increase his confidence, and then that'll bleed over and he'll have some more confidence with the ladies. So we get to have some nice footage of Prem doing his job. Unfortunately, the sale he was working on wasn't secured, but he did go ask this cute girl out. She did the runaround. She's like, oh, well, catch me before I leave for the day and we'll exchange numbers. And he was so excited. And he goes to tell Chop, and Chop was like, so did you get the number? And he's like, no, I'll get it later. And Chop's like, bro, you got to get it like now. And much like how the customers love to find an excuse to leave, to not have to talk to the salespeople anymore and get a deal that they don't think is fair or good, she did the same thing. She just left. So Prem, 0 for 2 today. One bad sale, one no sale, and one no lady. So Prem is pretty down. Chop takes him to the new Hummer dealership that Chop's dad is opening. We get to see a little bit about the Towbin family at large. And, then it all starts to make even more sense. Like, oh, Chop's dad is also a car sales guy, a dealership man. While they're at the Hummer dealership, and there's like a big event going on because it's a new opening, Prem tries to talk with some women there, but he is, again, unsuccessful. This episode ends out with another viewing of the Chopper show. We get to see, while it's being filmed. And there is a woman who actually emailed into the dealership to kind of gush a little bit about the Blue Genie, Prem, and how he's her favorite and how she'd love to meet him. So they actually got her to come to the dealership and dress up and be on the show as her own companion character to Prem's Blue Genie. She is Crystal Ball in her own costume and everything. And it seems like they have a good time on the show, and it was kind of cute. And then this show, doing the funniest thing that it's done in this entire season so far, ends with an on-screen text that just says, the Blue Genie is currently still single. Poor Prem can't catch a break even with the editors of the show. The penultimate episode, episode 12 overall, or 9 on Prime, is called Performance Anxiety. Our main plot focus here is a bunch of the employees of the dealership preparing to do auditions for a talent show competition that is going to occur during the all dealership Christmas party. So all 5 dealerships coming together for one giant party at the end of the year. We get to watch our employees audition for it and kind of be anxious about that. Barry from earlier, you remember Barry. He is one of our focuses here. Chop wants him to write a stand-up comedy routine because he's learned that Barry likes comedy. And most of this episode for Barry, when he's not being reprimanded about not spending enough time pushing cars again, is Chop being like, hope you got some good material. I'm excited to see it. Let's see what's going to happen. Because the judges for the auditions for the talent show are Chop's family members and he himself. So his parents, his sister are all there to judge the employees to see who's going to make it into the show. We learned that the show, the talent show itself idea came from Chop's mom. But we are also introduced to Orlando, who used to be a mariachi, and now he works here. And he, of course, was going to do some guitar playing in mariachi for the talent show. And Chop is like, that's great. Love your confidence in that. Can you have more confidence in your sales job? So while we watch Orlando working with another member of his sales team, Gabe, who usually, we've been shown that Gabe does good work so far. We don't spend a lot of time with him, but when he is in episodes, he's doing good work. So he works with Gabe, and Gabe kind of gives him some pointers, helps build his confidence, of course. The other group that we get exposed to, and this is technically we met some women who worked at the dealership last episode, but now we meet some more women. The customer service department, it's a whole team of women, and their act for the show is putting on their own rendition of the Chopper show. The auditions for this talent show come and go. Everyone who auditions pretty much gets in, including someone who's doing an Elvis impersonation. I mean, it is Vegas after all. But yes, Orlando the Mariachi, the Chopper skit. a squad of cheerleaders who come over from the Hummer dealership, like 4 women who like were clearly cheerleaders at one point, or maybe they're college age and they still are, who do a whole like routine and everything, which I was like, oh, all right. And Barry, who pulls out his little comedy routine by the end of the episode. Love a wrapped up story. Love that it happened. And we end out the episode. Actually, we get to see the like dealership's wide Christmas party. We get to see some of the talent show performances. It was like a competition with like cash prizes, and the women who did the fake shopper skit won that competition, so they got a nice little money prize there. And at the very, very end of the episode, we're told that Orlando, with his increased confidence by working with Gabe, has sold 11 cars. So that's nicely wrapped up as well. Last episode here, keeping up with the Joneses, episode 13 overall, or 10 on Prime. The whole focus for this episode is Tino, one of the floor managers, again, that we've been spending a good amount of time with across the whole show so far. The plot here is that Tino's first customers that he ever sold a car to are back again to get another car. When you have a good, when you have a guy, you go to your guy, right? But this proves to be tougher than expected. The couple that is here, they're looking for a very specific deal. They don't want to get scammed. They don't want a bad deal for them. They want a very specific, down payment, a very specific monthly payment. They're looking for a very specific vehicle, which the ones they're really mostly interested in are not really within their financial window for what, like, the credit checks and everything are telling them. So it's really, really tough. And at one point, one of Tino's salesmen, like, says something that offends the couple, almost gets them to leave. Luckily, Tino and Chop are able to kind of do some, like, damage control and help them out. And then, of course, by the end of the episode, it all works out, and Tino can secure the deal and close it out. We really get to see, like, his craft and him, like, working in his zone and in his element and doing his job very, very well here. Because while it looks like it's not going to work out, he finally, like, pulls out some magic, and he convinces them to go with a used car when they really, really wanted a new one because they'd had bad experiences with used cars in the past. But he's able to make it work, and he closes out the deal and everything. Chop's in this episode, of course. Most of him is just giving commentary, but he's also, like, running around doing errands. We go with him over to the Bentley dealership to pick up a car for a music producer friend. He tells us a bit about his start in business. We also meet his little sister, Jessica, who runs the roles in Bentley dealership. We get to learn a little bit about them and their difference in business. Chop, of course, like, started just working in a dealership and built his way up from there, while he tells us that Jessica she went the college route, went to dealer school, whatever that is, and it does things differently. And she even tells us, she's like, yeah, over here at the Bentley dealership, things are a little more sophisticated, a little more calmer and low-key. She's like, we have to sell to a different, general type of clientele. But it's neat to see that. So that was the recap of our show here. And, as I've been alluding to this entire time, I think it's very salient that the show, in the title alone, is not necessarily about the dealership. It's about Chop, the King of Cars. We do get to see the salesmen and the managers. They are a part of this story, but really what the producers and then what the editors made and then delivered as the final show is all about Chop, which also makes sense. I'm sure they were faced with, so many hours of footage, and you got to decide what to do with it. How do you make an engaging and entertaining show out of what could be thousands of hours of just people at a car dealership? A completely different kind of show could be made where it really is just very, like, fly on the wall style, watching people negotiate and try to sell cars, and that's it. I don't know how entertaining that would be to you, but I'm sure I would find it entertaining in a sick way. But our real central focus here is, of course, Chop. And I definitely think that, this show makes a point and really supports the idea that Chop is this kind of deified figure, this venerated man among his community and within his domain. And he himself displays all these like very characteristic aspects of cultural ideas of kings themselves. He has his subjects, the residents of Las Vegas and Henderson in Nevada. He has his own vassals and knights, right? Willie and the other floor managers, and then all the salesmen that work for him. And he's constantly keeping tabs on what are they doing, how well are they doing at the job that he expects them to do. He chooses some to elevate and to promote above others, and he also comes down on the ones who aren't performing the way that he expects them to. He, has the absolute domain and rule over what goes on in this dealership, what happens at his castle. He's concerned with his legacy. He's concerned with showing off his wealth, and in this case, which is both a like physical capital, meaning like his cars, the lowrider, right? But also his knowledge of the cars in the industry is another form of like wealth that has granted him this position. And in addition to his experience and his actual, kings can be, and royalty and monarchs can come into power because they're part of a royal family. But there's also, of course, legendary stories of kings who come in and have done some kind of conquering or some kind of great deed that makes them a legend. And in this case, it was him, stepping into the role of taking over the show and starting as the used car salesman and the used car manager, and then coming all the way up to general manager and like the owner of the dealership. This show, I think, does a really good job of like structuring its episodes and choosing what to focus on and what stories to tell that support all that idea. And for the most part, it did all that while also being fairly entertaining. I wouldn't call this show a foundational piece of the entire genre. I had never even heard of it before doing this episode on it and watching it. And I'm not even sure if it's something where I'd be like, you have to watch this. But it was interesting to watch, and I definitely enjoy that I did watch it and now have the knowledge of it to pull out for random trivia. The show did get a second season. It did well enough to earn that. However, I have no idea how to watch that second season. So, unless I can find a way to watch it, this may be the only coverage on King of Cars I ever get to. I know in the past that Season 1 was available on DVD, but Season 2 was never made available. So if people don't have recordings of it somewhere, then it may also be lost. We'll have to see what happens. I may need to scour like YouTube and Dailymotion and whatnot to see if people have uploaded like pieces and snippets of the second season. I think there are descriptions of the episodes available online, like what would have been seen in the TV guide at the time. But, there's only so much you can do with that in terms of trying to analyze the show and figure out what it's about and what's going on. So, that was King of Cars. Thank you very much for listening to this installment of the recap episode. Please like, rate, share the show on your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Podchaser, all of those. You can follow me on social media to get updates about the show, see what I'm currently watching or working on, Instagram at the recap episode, or on YouTube at the recap episode pod, where all these episodes are uploaded in YouTube format and in various playlists for longer form series, which will be coming in the next year. So, again, thank you for listening, and I'll play out with some more King of Cars.
King of Cars, baby. We do it large, baby. First in the nation, and it's not no mirage, baby. I got the blue genie, need a deal, come see me. Chopper edition, low pros in the slime teasies. We got them dope whips, you need to come and cop them. We got them low prices, cause I chop 'em.